The first time Daniel Reed thought about ending his life, it wasn't dramatic. There were no flashing sirens in his mind, no loud breakdown. It was quiet, terrifyingly quiet. It happened on a gray Tuesday afternoon in downtown Chicago. The kind of cold that sinks into your bones and makes the world feel smaller. Daniel stood on the elevated train platform, staring at the tracks below. He wasn't crying. He wasn't shaking. He just felt empty. 6 months earlier, Daniel had been a respected paramedic. 20 years of rushing into chaos, saving strangers, carrying broken bodies and broken stories. But one night changed everything. A multi-car accident. A little girl trapped in the backseat. He tried. God, he tried. But she didn't make it. Since then, Daniel hadn't slept more than a few hours at a time. Every siren sounded like a scream. Every little girl with pigtails felt like a ghost. He quit his job. His wife, Laura, tried to help, but grief turned him distant. Eventually, she moved out, taking their silence with her. Now he worked night stocking shelves at a grocery store. No noise. No pressure. No lives in his hands. The train roared in the distance, wind whipping across the platform. Daniel stepped closer to the edge. Just one more step. "Excuse me, mister." The voice was small, soft, real. Daniel turned. A little girl stood a few feet away, bundled in a bright pink coat that looked too big for her. Her curly brown hair escaped from beneath a knitted hat. She couldn't have been more than 7. She held out a piece of paper. "You look sad," she said simply. "I made this for you." Daniel blinked. "For me?" She nodded like it was the most obvious thing in the world. On the paper was a crayon drawing. It showed a stick figure man standing under a huge yellow sun. Next to him was a little girl holding his hand. Above them, in uneven letters, it said, "You are my hero." Daniel felt something crack inside his chest. "Why would you give this to me?" He asked, his voice rough. "Because my mommy says when someone looks like they're carrying something heavy inside, sometimes a little light helps." The train thundered closer. Daniel looked at the drawing again. The sun was too big. The colors messy. The words misspelled. But the man in the picture was smiling. No one had called him a hero in a long time. The train screeched into the station. Wind rushed past. Daniel stepped back. When he looked up, the little girl was already walking toward a woman who must have been her mother. She waved at him. "Bye, hero," she called. The doors closed. The train pulled away. Daniel stood there, heart pounding, staring at the drawing in his trembling hands. He didn't know it yet, but that piece of paper would save his life. Daniel kept the drawing folded in his jacket pocket. He didn't know why. Maybe because throwing it away felt wrong. Maybe because it was the only thing that had interrupted his dark thoughts in months. That night at work, he unfolded it during his break. The grocery store was nearly empty, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. He traced the crayon letters with his thumb. "You are my hero." He laughed under his breath. "You don't even know me, kid." But the truth stung. He used to be someone. Someone brave. Someone strong. Now he avoided mirrors. Over the next few days, Daniel found himself thinking about the little girl. Her calm voice. The way she'd look straight at him, unafraid. Children were supposed to be cautious around strangers. But she hadn't seen danger in him. She'd seen sadness. And she'd responded with kindness. 3 nights later, Daniel was walking home after his shift, when he saw flashing lights at an intersection ahead. A car had slammed into a delivery truck. Smoke rose from the crumpled hood. People stood around filming with their phones. Daniel froze. His heart pounded the way it used to when dispatch would call out an emergency. His body remembered what to do. His mind screamed at him to keep walking. "It's not your job anymore," he muttered. Then he heard it. A child crying. High-pitched. Terrified. Without thinking, Daniel ran. A little boy was trapped in the back seat of the smaller car. Maybe 5 years old. His mother was unconscious in the front. The driver's side door was crushed. "Someone call 911. Daniel shouted, pushing through the crowd. "They are on the way." Someone yelled back. Daniel knelt beside the car. The smell of gasoline filled the air. The boy's eyes were wide with fear. "It's okay, buddy," Daniel said, forcing his voice steady. "I've got you." His hands moved automatically, checking for bleeding, stabilizing the boy's neck, talking him through slow breaths. "It hurts," the boy whimpered. "I know, but you're being really brave." Sirens wailed in the distance. Daniel didn't notice the shaking in his own hands until the fire department arrived. He stepped back as professionals took over. One of the paramedics looked at him. "You medical?" "Used to be," Daniel replied. The paramedic nodded. "Good thing you were here. Kid might have panicked and made it worse." Daniel stepped away from the chaos, breathing hard. In his pocket, he felt the crinkled drawing. Hero. For the first time in months, he didn't feel empty. He felt needed. He went home that night and taped the drawing to his refrigerator. Sleep didn't come easily to Daniel, but that night was different. He dreamed, not of flashing lights or broken glass, but of a bright, yellow sun drawn in crayon. The next morning, something shifted. It wasn't a miracle. The grief was still there. The guilt hadn't vanished, but the weight didn't feel quite as crushing. Daniel found himself wondering about the little girl again. Who was she? Why had she chosen him? A week later, he saw her. He was at the same train station, this time in the early evening. He wasn't sure why he'd gone back. Maybe part of him hoped it hadn't been a hallucination born from desperation. Then he spotted the pink coat. She was sitting on a bench, swinging her legs, while her mother scrolled through her phone beside her. Daniel hesitated before approaching. "Hi," he said gently. The girl looked up and grinned. "Hi, hero." Her mother looked startled. "I'm sorry, do you know each other?" "Not really," Daniel admitted. "She gave me a drawing last week." The woman smiled apologetically. "Oh, that sounds like her. She thinks the world needs more art." The girl hopped off the bench. "Did you like it?" Daniel swallowed. "I did. It helped me more than you know." She studied his face. "You don't look as sad today." He chuckled softly. "I'm working on it." Her mother extended her hand. "I'm Emily. And this is Sophie." "Daniel." They talked for a few minutes. Sophie told him about school, about how she wanted to be a doctor for animals and people, and how her teacher said she had a big heart. As the train approached, Daniel felt an unexpected fear. What if he never saw them again? "Wait," he said quickly. Can I ask why you gave me that drawing?" Sophie tilted her head like the question confused her. "Because you look like someone who forgot he was special," she said. "Sometimes grown-ups forget." The train doors opened. Emily placed a gentle hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Time to go." Sophie waved again as they stepped inside. "Don't forget again, okay?" She called. The doors slid shut. Daniel stood there long after the train disappeared. Forgot he was special. He had spent months defining himself by the one life he couldn't save. But what about the hundreds he had? What about the little boy from last week? What about the countless nights he'd come home exhausted but proud? For the first time, Daniel considered something radical. Maybe he deserved to live. 2 months later, Daniel returned to the firehouse. Not as a full-time paramedic, he wasn't ready for that, but as a volunteer. The first call back nearly broke him. An elderly man in cardiac arrest. Daniel's hands trembled as he performed chest compressions. But he didn't run. He stayed. The man survived. Afterward, Daniel sat alone in the locker room, tears streaming down his face. Not from trauma, but from relief. He was still capable. He was still needed. That evening, he stopped by the train station again, hoping to see Sophie and Emily. They weren't there. Instead, he saw chaos. An SUV had jumped the curb near the entrance. People were screaming. Smoke billowed from the engine. And there, on the sidewalk, was a small pink coat. Daniel's heart stopped. "Sophie!" He shouted, sprinting forward. Emily was pinned near the vehicle, unconscious. Sophie was on the ground a few feet away, crying but conscious. "Daniel!" She sobbed when she saw him. He dropped to his knees beside her. "I'm here. I've got you." He checked her quickly. No major bleeding, possible broken arm. Gasoline pooled beneath the SUV. He heard someone yell, "It could blow." Daniel didn't hesitate. He lifted Sophie carefully and carried her to a safe distance, handing her to a bystander. Then he ran back for Emily. The door was jammed. Flames flickered under the hood. "Come on," he muttered, adrenaline surging. With a grunt, he forced the door open enough to pull her free. Seconds after he dragged Emily away, the engine erupted in flames. Firefighters arrived moments later. Daniel collapsed onto the pavement, chest heaving. Sophie ran to him, wrapping her uninjured arm around his neck. "You saved us," she whispered. He looked at her, at the tear-streaked face of the little girl who had once handed him a crayon sun. "No," he said softly. "You saved me first." At the hospital, doctors confirmed Sophie would recover fully. Emily suffered minor injuries but was stable. Daniel sat in the waiting room, staring at his hands, the same hands that had once felt useless. Emily approached him slowly, arm in a sling. "I don't even know how to thank you," she said, voice shaking. Daniel smiled faintly. "You already did. A few weeks ago." She looked confused until Sophie appeared beside her, holding something behind her back. "I made you another one," Sophie announced. She handed him a new drawing. This one showed a man standing tall between two people, shielding them from a burst of red and orange scribbles. Above them was the same oversized yellow sun, but the words were different. "Real heroes stay." Daniel's vision blurred. He thought about that Tuesday on the platform, about the edge, about the quiet. If Sophie hadn't spoken to him, if she hadn't handed him that simple piece of paper, he wouldn't be here, and neither would they. Weeks later, Daniel returned to full-time paramedic duty. The nightmares didn't vanish overnight. Healing wasn't instant. But now, when the darkness crept in, he looked at the drawings taped inside his locker. He remembered that one failure didn't erase a lifetime of courage. He remembered that kindness, no matter how small, can interrupt even the most dangerous silence. And every once in a while, when the job felt heavy, he'd visit the train station, just to see a little girl in a pink coat, waving at him like he hung the sun in the sky. Daniel Reed once stood on the edge of ending his life. All it took to pull him back was a crayon sun, a child's faith, and the reminder that even broken heroes still matter.